Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Mandy, the Handmade Homeschooler, and today we're going to talk about independent learning and some of the reasons why I set up my homeschool in this manner. And it's a little different than most people are probably used to seeing online, but I keep it pretty real around here. I am not shy about the fact that I have my kids do a lot of their work independently. So I'm going to explain why I do that and hopefully give you some tips if you want to start implementing some of this in your homeschool. For that, I want to remind you to hit the like and the subscribe button, and down below in the description box I have a link to a bunch of free curriculum trials and all kinds of cool things if you want to check out some of the curriculum that we use. So independent learning, let me explain a little bit about it before I tell you anything else, because I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. When I say independent learning, what I mean is my kids are doing the work and I'm overseeing it, kind of like a manager. I oversee the work, I grade the work, I make sure everything is being done, and I also check for comprehension. We also have family discussions about it, so I'm not hands off. Independent learning does not mean hands off, and I want to make that very clear before I have a bunch of angry messages about how I'm a terrible parent. So now that we understand a little bit more about what independent learning is and what it is not, let's jump into some other topics surrounding this big topic of independent learning. There's a lot of reasons why we have set up our homeschool to be a little bit more independent with our kids. One of the big reasons why I started doing this was because I get sick a lot. So I don't like talking about it a whole lot because people think automatically that I'm trying to get sympathy or, something weird like that. But I have a brain condition. It's incurable, it's inoperable, and it causes a lot of pain for me. It causes migraines, it causes, just a lot of things that I don't even want to talk about. But while I'm in treatment for this, which is often, it's just a lot easier for my family if I have kids who can be independent and proactive about their schooling and can get things going on days where I might be running just a little bit behind. So sorry about the lighting. It is cold and dark and rainy today, and I have had to turn so much lighting and brightness on this camera just so you could actually see me, even though all the lights are on in this room. It is crazy dark. It's like the perfect October-y fall day. All right, so one of the things that I did when I came up with this idea of homeschooling was I wanted to have an ace up my sleeve, because I knew even back then that I got migraines a lot, and I was worried about those days where I wouldn't be able to be running on all pistons. So what could I do? And I had this idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to teach them very early on to be independent. And I know a lot of you are going to yell, but Mandy, your kids are a lot older than mine. Yes, but we've been doing this since they've been able to read. And I started this before they could read. Remember, I started homeschooling my youngest when he was in kindergarten. So I have been doing this since day one, and it has worked out very nicely for me and for my kids and for my family. But I had to start these habits young, so now I can kind of just be hands-off if I need to be, or I can be completely hands-on if I do want to be involved. So a lot of times my involvement depends on how well am I running today, you know what I mean? But most days, thankfully, I am very much involved, and there are some of those days where I feel like I have to make them up, but it's okay. We're doing great. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to be heavily involved in every single subject all day long, every day. However, there is, the thing called time and the fact that I'm just one person, yes, I have my husband here. He's retired military, and he teaches some of the classes, but I can't split myself into two. And so we've set things up for the kids to be a little bit more independent, just to give me a little bit of breathing room, especially on those days where I'm sick or we just have things going on or I have a doctor's appointment, you know, life things, you know. So that's what we're doing, especially because I have one in high school. Now, if you think about how public school is set up, I had a different teacher for every single subject. So that one teacher, yes, while they may have been completely hands-on, they were only teaching that one subject. Most of the time, high school teachers, unless they're teaching electives, teach just 1 to 2 subjects tops, because that's all somebody's brain can handle. And they're teaching that all day, every day, to different classes. And they're teaching typically the same class or modified a little bit up or down, depending on grade, if it's an AP course, whatever. So, you know, you got to think, we're teaching all the subjects. That's a lot. That is a lot. And if we have more than one kid, we're teaching all the subjects to that many kids. So if you have 5 kids, you're teaching English maybe 5 different times, because if they are in different grades or on different levels, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff for your mommy brain and for my brain. I want them to be able to be more independent, so when they go off to college, it's not so much of a stark contrast of mom was involved in everything and now I'm out here on my own. So I want there to be more of a transition. So the older the kids get, the less hands-on I am. But I'm still there. You know, I'm still there as teacher, as parent, doing whatever I need to do, whether that is grading papers or explaining how to do something within their assignment. I'm still there helping them. So I don't want you to think that like I'm just throwing them to the wolves, because I know I'm gonna get comments like that. It's the internet, and people tend not to listen to the entire video or understand. Sometimes there's just misunderstandings. It happens. But I just want to make that very clear. I am not feeding my kids to the wolves and letting them hang out there on their own and just do school all by themselves. So please understand that before I go any further. Please understand, I am not letting the kids hang, okay? It's all oversight. Everything we do is with parental involvement. And you know, my kids are getting to the age where they're starting to think about their first jobs and things like that, and what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And you know, one of the things that many people have to do, I would wager most people have to do with a job, is they have to learn new skills. And a lot of times that means reading something, whether it's a manual or whether it's a class maybe that they have to take. I want my kids to be able to be self-motivated enough to do that without me holding their hand or their boss holding their hand. And doing school this way also teaches them initiative, which is something that many kids today, especially teenagers, don't seem to have. But teaching them how to do this kind of helps them learn the skill of initiative with things like work and school and education. So there's a lot of benefits to doing school like this. This has worked out great for my family. I'm not saying that this is the perfect thing for you. I am not. But this might be helpful for people who might be in a medical condition like me, or, you know, you just want to teach your kids a little bit more, you know, self-motivation or whatever. This does really help. When my kids were really young and we first started homeschooling, one of the first things that I did to teach this type of self-motivation was I made a list. I had a clipboard for each child, and we had a list of all of the subjects and the things that they had to do for each subject. It wasn't their own planner, but you can kind of think of it as like a very elementary way of making kind of like a daily plan for them. And we would go through each thing together and we would check it off, either with a marker or a crayon or whatever they had in their hand, and we would just mark each task off daily. And it gave them a sense of self-satisfaction. I don't know what it is about just marking something off on a to-do list, but it gives me such a feeling of euphoria. And I feel like my kids are the same way. So when they went through each thing, they were super excited because they were almost done and then they could go play. So we did this every day for quite a few years until the kids both knew how to read and they knew how to do each thing. Now, we slowly transitioned from the daily list that they had on their desk up to now my kids have a list on the whiteboard of just the subjects. Each of those subjects need to be done. I do not write daily what needs to be done. I don't write the pages. I don't write any of that. They have their own, whether I copy those pages or they grab the teacher book. They have their own list of everything that needs to be done for the day within that book. Now, if you use like Generations like I do, they have like a workbook, student book, teacher book combo, which makes it so easy for me. And they just turn at the very front, they find the day, they check off the assignment. It tells them exactly what to do, and they can check off that they did that thing. And then they can just hand it to me at the end of the day, and I can look it over. We can have our discussion about it. We can do whatever we're going to do for that subject. I love Generations for that fact alone. It makes my life so much easier because everything's really condensed. It makes those bigger high school classes a little bit easier. So like, here's some of the high school classes from Generations. We did these last year for grade 10. So we have Great Christian Classics and God and Government. So these were the textbooks, and then you had a workbook for the teacher and the student. And at the very beginning of the book was the schedule. And what you can do is you can make a copy for yourself and your child, or you can just leave it in the book and just give them the schedule and be like, okay, you need to do these things. Makes things so much easier when the books are condensed. And then when they're done with the assignment, I can just look it over. I can check the answers. We can discuss it. We can talk about what they read. And then we can move on to the next assignment. Super easy to keep track of, super easy to do. And honestly, it's just, for me as a parent, it's one of those things that just brings me a little bit of joy, you know, because I feel like we get to enjoy the subjects more rather than focusing on so much of the task and just marking things off. I feel like now we kind of get to like soak in the information. We get to discuss it a little bit more. And that comes with, you know, the kids being a little bit older. Now, I have to say, a lot of times when I'm on Instagram and I see the camera pan in the reels and their little videos of, you know, the painting and the nature studies and all those cute things and all the cute books and all the adorable kids, and I see that and my heart just, I love it. I do. But here is something that I keep reminding myself. My kids are like 12 years older than those kids in most cases. And that's just not what our homeschool looks like. And it's totally okay if your homeschool doesn't look like that. It doesn't have to look like that. Your homeschool needs to work for your kids, and it needs to work for your family. And that's something that we have to remember when we see stuff like that on Instagram. And that's a lot of the reason why I don't go on Instagram as much anymore, because I have that, like, not FOMO, but I don't know, like, I feel almost inadequate, even though I've been doing this for so long. Sometimes it's really hard not to feel that way. So remember, when you see a lot of those things, if you have older kids like me, remember a lot of that stuff is younger children. It's not for older children. And, you know, if older kids do it, that's fantastic. I have yet to see a reel where, you know, I see kids my children's age doing that type of stuff. But that stuff is so adorable, and I just love it. And I wish, you know, sometimes that was my homeschool, but it's not. So independent learning can be extremely helpful for families. It really can be. I know it has changed my homeschool. It has made things so much easier. If you start implementing these things young, by the time they are in high school, you're not going to have to do a whole lot other than oversight and management. And if you want to teach the classes, you can. Now, for my middle schooler, I still teach some of his classes, but I get to pick and choose which ones I want to do. And another thing that I should reiterate too is I am not their only teacher. There's also their father. There's also the teachers on Compass Classroom who are teaching them virtually. And we have all different kinds of teachers kind of coming in and forming this really cool team of teachers. So when they get older, you can bring in other things. You know, you can outsource your classes to different companies like this, and it's actually a lot of fun. And my kids have loved having the different mixed bag of teachers teaching them these different subjects. You can actually have different teachers helping you along the way. But it's also fostering that independent learning, because my kids basically, when they're ready for that subject, they just hop on the computer and they do their thing. And then some of the classes are automatically graded, some are not. It just kind of depends on what the class is. But you know, each one has a different level of involvement for me as a parent. So I'm still involved, but I don't have to be totally 100% in. You know, I can kind of have some help from some of these other curriculum companies, and it's fantastic. So that is all I have for this video. I hope it answers some of your questions about independent learning and how I kind of implement that in my homeschool. Maybe some ways that you can start doing that too, especially if you have younger children. The younger you start with this, the better. You know, when you start with the younger kids, they get, you know, used to it, and then they just kind of go. And every year it gets better and better, and I'm really gonna miss my kids when they're not homeschooling anymore and they've left. I think I'm gonna have a little bit of a hole in my heart. But you know, I've really enjoyed all of the time that we've spent together, even if I'm not totally 100% involved in teaching every single class. But the great thing about that is that I get to really concentrate on certain subjects. So I get to be super involved with one, but maybe I'm just grading papers in another. So it does save my sanity a little bit in that aspect too. I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you have a great rest of your day and happy homeschooling.